Hi and welcome back to Garden Ninja. Now today's video is all about plastics in the garden. Now if you're a gardener like me, you'll be well aware that pretty much everything you buy, whether it's a plant in a pot, compost or other garden equipment, usually comes with some form of plastic. Now plastic's incredibly resilient, you can do a lot with it, but it takes up to 400 to 500 years to fully break down. And you may have watched things like the Blue Planet or read newspaper articles about how plastics are polluting not only our seas but also the land and getting into our food chain. So there's been loads of press on it, there's been some really good ideas, but what I thought I'd do today is show you the research that I've undertaken over the past few months to give you different alternatives to things like the plastic plant pot. So come on, let me show you. So here we have just a very small example of black plastic plant pots that are causing a real issue in terms of recycling. So the biggest issue with plastic plant pots is that they can't be recycled easily. Because they've got a black pigment in them, which is carbon, a lot of the recycling centres say that they can't recycle them because the infrared beam that they use to spot plastic does not work on these plant pots. So they basically end up in landfill or being incinerated for energy. So all that carbon and all the chemicals that are contained within the plastic just get pushed back into the atmosphere at a rapid rate. Now there are some companies that have started to introduce coloured plastic into their plant pot production. Aeroplas are one very company that have introduced the taupe plant pot, and this means that the infrared beams in the recycling centres can pick them up. However, a more concerning issue that was raised by Gardening Without Plastic is that out of the 79% of councils in the UK that do curbside plastic recycling, 87% of those would not recycle plant pots even if they were picked up by their machinery. They simply don't offer that facility for plastic plant pots, which is really frustrating because people are making these changes in the industry, but at the core of this problem is that the recycling facilities just aren't there available for them. So if we can't recycle plastic properly, then we need to start looking at alternatives to plastic entirely. And that's what I'm going to move on to next. So I've spoken to a number of companies and innovators that are doing different things in the industry to try and reduce the trend and use of plastic. Now there are plenty of home alternatives that you can use back in your own gardens to avoid using black plastic plant pots. So things such as coir plant pots which break down, you can use toilet rolls, loo rolls to plant your seedlings in and then plant them straight out. You can make your own small pots out of newspaper, wax paper, cow dung. But the issue with all of these recyclable alternatives is that they're not very suitable for transporting plants from nurseries to either wholesalers or to customers, and that's what I'm going to be looking at today, is what can we do to get plants from nurseries that doesn't involve this, black plastic. Now the first alternative that I've uncovered are for people that tend to use plastic in their garden to display plants and flowers. Now I've been sent these, which are bamboo fibre plant pots. Now they come in a range of wacky colours, but the claim is that if they're sent to landfill, they will biodegrade without a trace within 5 years. So if you're the kind of person that maybe has a balcony or a patio and you're using plastic to display plants, these are a great alternative for that. But they don't really solve the problem of black plastic plant pots. So I'm going to move on to other alternatives for how you can source your plants without the need for black plastic. So what about people that want to buy plants without plastic? Now Edible Culture UK, who are based down south, have come up with a really ingenious idea, and it's this, the Posi Pops. Now they've created this entirely themselves. It's made of recyclable card, and if you can see that little lolly stick skewer, that secures the pot. So there's no glue or adhesive. They write the plant name on the stick, which also biodegrades. Now what they do is, if you buy the plants from them at their nursery, they will put a layer of mycorrhizal fungi in the bottom. Now all that fungi does is build a relationship between the roots and the fungi that exchanges moisture for sugar. So it basically kick-starts your plants and makes sure that they have the best start in life. Now what you do with these is you take them home and you literally plant them out. You do nothing more, and within a couple of weeks this pot will have started to biodegrade, fallen apart, the fungi does its work, the roots establish. It's cheap, it's cheerful, and I think it's a brilliant idea. So the next innovative example comes from Bluebell Cottage Nursery up here in the northwest of England. Now Sue Beasley, the owner, has been championing the move away from plastics for some time, and she's come up with a solution for her customers which also removes the need for plastic pots. Now at the point of sale, when you buy a plant from her, you can have it decanted into a biodegradable container or a paper bag that can be then taken straight home and planted on. Now what Sue does is cleans and recycles those black plastic plant pots by propagating more plants ready for next year. If you mail order from her, she will deliver them in a cardboard box wrapped in wax paper with biodegradable labels with a plant name on, so completely removing the need for plastic tags, name labels or any plastic plant pots, which is a great idea. What's been really eye-opening for me as this story's gathered more momentum is just how much plastic I consume as a garden designer, and just looking back over the last year and the amount of plant pots that I've gone to is worrying. Now luckily for me, I managed to take a load to a recycling centre that does recycle them, but it was quite a long way away, and I know that a lot of you were saying, well, we can find these centres, but they're miles away, and there's a trade-off between the balance of carbon that you put in your van or your car to get them there and trying to recycle them, and it's a horrible dilemma, which is what's led me on to trying to find alternatives, because there's no way that we can just carry on churning through a sea of plastic. So I know that I've only just scratched the surface on what to do with the recycling issue around black plastic. Now I spoke to a number of manufacturers, wholesalers, independent nurseries, some of which were really keen to talk to me, others not so much, but I know there's plenty more ideas out there, and I think it's about keeping the debate going and opening people's eyes to alternatives. So what I'm going to do is ask you, the viewer, to help me. We've got to get the message out there about alternatives, because we can't just keep drowning in a sea of plastic. So if you've got ideas, or you know businesses or nurseries that are doing things differently, leave a comment below, get in touch on Twitter, follow my blog and add comments, and let's try and get a list of all the alternatives and see what we can do, the customers, to remove the need for these. So if you've liked this video or feel strongly about the topic of recycling, why not subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this video, and let's keep the debate going. I've been Garden Ninja. Happy gardening.